I know you know, I know you are the light that will shine, shine, shine on your mind, mind, mind. Yeah, so bright, 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 that will shine, shine, shine. Bright, 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 bright on your mind, mind, mind. Yeah, so bright, 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 bright.
Hello.
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 Greetings.
Hey. How
How
are
are
you?
you?
I'm doing very well. How are you both?
Oh, there you
Awesome.
go.
Yeah.
Quite a day today.
Oh my goodness, very nice. I spent a lot of time outside today doing yard work, grounding, just touching the earth. Sun was shining,
Excellent.
beautiful. So, how we come to this phenomenal date is
Hmm.
should be the entrance of the show because it's just so
Yeah.
I still can't believe it. So
Yeah, me too.
Ra Ra is writing this book, or is just about to finish this book, and it's called 19,000 Years of Peace. And the 19 and the 4 play a big role in that book and in the whole system. And today is 419. And actually, I've been talking to Ra for about 2 years and trying to get him on the show. And so then we were busy and here and there and whatnot. And so now, when he contacted me back, I said, okay, the next slot is 419, Sunday. I mean, how the universe made that possible, I don't think we even need to ask.
Yeah, no, I just give thanks, basically.
It's beautiful.
Thank you,
Really
universe,
awesome.
for this opportunity. Wow.
Thank you so much.
And thank you both. Like, wow. Thank
Yeah, finally we came together. So, as I understand, this is your first radio show, really. You've done some presentations about your stuff, which goes pretty deep and is complex, and one has
you.
to
Yep.
have a calculator ready, and one
Calculators
has
can be handy indeed, yeah.
yeah, that I mean, there's a lot of numbers, a lot of math in there. Me as a Virgo, I like numbers. I analyze not, so that's completely fine with me. Um, but yeah, that's what we usually do. Uh, maybe you can introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a story how you got to this, how did you stumble upon the calendar stuff, and how did you get so deep into it? And
Hmm.
hmm,
Yeah. To begin with, it would have been the Mayan Factor book. Jose Guelis's book about the Zolkin
right,
Mayan calendar, stuff like that. But I mean, before all of that, it's just essentially I've had like a natural strength with maths ever since I was a kid. It just kind of like happened. It just naturally happens. I find maths very easy.
hmm,
So that, as well as like never ever seeing any sort of books that were mathematical that actually were interesting, and then finding the Mayan Factor book. What can I say? It switched on like, what felt like hundreds of lights at the same time, basically.
huh,
And but I mean, later on in relation to the actual flower of life and time, that is more to do with investigating like geometry, and then trying to kind of blend the two together, blend the abstract maths and cycles with geometry, so that you then get a kind of matrix-like mandala that represents the various numerologies that these different cycles embody,
mm,
And then, yeah, lots of the complex maths, basically, what we were just saying, looking into the cycles of 19, what sort of ratios of the cycles, and then the 19 kind of like jumped out at me. And then, yeah, historical stuff, generally speaking, in the historical records, the 19-year cycle is referred to as the Metonic cycle, after Meton in Greece. Funnily enough, it's usually referred to as being a discovery of the year 432 BC, which is an interesting number, 432.
Very interesting number.
Why that ends up being the year is beyond me, but that's who in history it's usually referred to, and then they quote various ancient cultures that use the cycle, but essentially you could pretty much quote every ancient culture as having used the cycle. It's more of a, can you find a culture that hasn't used the cycle, basically, or worked with it, and this is then part of the kind of theory of the book. It all goes back to my near-death experience, because that was like, it wasn't like, I've heard lots of other people's near-death experiences sound way more exciting than mine.
Yours was boring.
Well, no, it was just really peaceful. I was really ill. We had a dowser staying with us. He did a meditation with me while the ambulance was coming, and somehow managed to take the edge off my temperature, because it was going through the roof. And at this point I was delirious, and I have this vivid memory of seeing myself in the corner of the room.
Wow.
And just being really peaceful. I wasn't in my body anymore. And I was just really peaceful, just observing what was going on and going, oh, okay, right. All right, okay. Well, I wonder what will happen next,
Yeah. And then do you remember how you went back in, or just...
Well, what I really do, I just have a memory of looking at myself in the corner of the room for ages, like I was some sort of meditation almost. And next thing I know, I wake up the next day and I'm fine. I don't have any illness anymore.
Huh. Wow.
So yeah, but yeah, I mean, there's so much stuff out there, man. I've done a bit of research more recently with this whole near-death experiences and academic research into the evidence we have in regards to all this stuff. And it's huge. There's tons. There's tons and tons. Just all these different other, bizarre subjects. If you look into them and you kind of filter out the cheesy bits, you find some really, really, integral researchers who have, spent the majority of their lives investigating a specific thing and done justice to it. And then you look at all the information, you're just kind of okay, so maybe we do live in a, quantum sort of is a word I guess I could use to describe quantum reality. We can't see the other world with our physical eyes, because our physical eyes can only see a certain spectrum of light. But it doesn't mean that it's not there.
Yeah, small spectrum indeed.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. That all these different flowers of life around the planet, all the different flower of life geometry, the hexagonal matrices around the planet are remnants of this kind of understanding of time and space, and the frequency and ratios that nature produces, because that's essentially what kind of grabbed my attention from a lot of Jose's work, was to do with this thing called natural time. That there's been this story of history, and humanity's kind of divorced itself from nature and tried to create this artificial bubble around itself.
Right, calling it natural time implies there would be the possibility of create something like unnatural time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Which is kind of evolved into kind of mechanized time. It's what we see on the computer, the digital clock, all this kind of stuff. It has actually kind of produced a different time sort of bubble, And then, yeah, basically my fascination is just what kind of hidden sort of secrets nature might have that maybe people have kind of I don't know. This is the thing, you don't see any references between flower of life and the 19-year cycle. You know,
Hmm.
they're usually separate. One is a geometry, the other one is time. But in my mind, essentially they're the same thing. That we actually live in a flower of life uh, time matrix, time cycle matrix that's essentially created by the orbits of the moon and the Earth around the sun.
Hmm. And
Basically.
once you start putting that down on the paper, and
Yeah.
using those numbers, it becomes the sacred geometry. And 19,
Mm,
1 plus 9 is 10, which stands for completion, right?
indeed.
And then that times 4 reduces to the 4 again. So here's your spiral. Now it's just bigger. It's the bigger cycle of 4 and 19. And 4
Absolutely.
already implies the completion as well, because as we know, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 is 10. So that information is in the foundation already there.
Right on. Great pyramids.
Yeah, great.
Four-sided.
Yeah.
Yeah, rock on.
And then if you
Absolutely.
look harder, it's 8-sided, right?
Yeah. Well, that's it. It's kind of like that thing of there's being the surface information, and then there's always stuff looking deeper as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we are in an interesting time right now, according to many myths and sacred text, including the book of Revelation.
Mm.
Uh, we're in this end time right now, which is that, yeah, the time of revelation. They call it a apocalypse, you know, and you can look at apocalypse in two different ways. We learned it
Yeah.
that it would be the end of the world and the final destruction, but that's from the people who use the unnatural time. If you look at it from the natural time, it's really just uh, the beginning, because an end is always a
Yeah.
beginning, and apocalypse also means to uncover something that is unknown.
Yeah. To step out from Kali Yuga to another Yuga to go further.
Hmm. And that's
For
what
sure.
happened, you know, if you leave it up to the religions to contemplate, because humanity as a whole is asleep in the dark age, then that's what happens. They're gonna make that timetable, that time plan, that calendar uh, for us, and and then we're trapped in a matrix that is unnatural. Simple
Yeah.
Yeah.
as that. And
Mm.
we already hear that talking about this stuff and time has a lot of the well, the CAL or KAL, you know, calendar, calculate, calculus, calibrate, caliber, caliper. Those are all, if you look at it and what they mean, it makes sense. And that goes back to Kala, Kala,
Hmm.
in the etymology, which basically means time. Um, or yeah, then we have Kali, which is a goddess of well, there's two actually. There's a god and a goddess. One means destruction, and the other one is the opposite. Again, and even words like caliph uh, means successor. There's a time implied there as well. You know, the next one,
Yeah.
uh, which then caliph also sounds like calf, which is a young cow, which is the mother cow's successor, the new one, the next one. Um, and caliph, calf, you know, that's the holy cow god, um, and so on. And interesting, what we also find is that it gives us a visualization of time with the words, and those word stems by looking at things like calamari and calamity, which are dark things. Now the calamari is white, but it has dark ink. So
Yeah.
it can mean dark and it can also mean white. For example, calcium is white. Chalk is white. So there's the duality implied in colors visually, and that is talking about time,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
interestingly.
Absolutely.
And
And
also we calculate our
mhm,
kilometers, Kali and meters, everything we do, all colors and even
hmm,
the distances.
all measure. And then if you look at black and white, well, that gets boring. So then you get to color, which we did a
Yeah.
a slide on the time back and called it call-er. When you call-er, and the word call is also a measure. That the sound measure. So we got everything in there in
Yeah.
time. Whew.
Yep.
It's very complex. A big one to wrap your head around that whole thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. All points of the mandala included. All extremes, all balance points. Like the yin and the yang, the black and the white, day and night, the whole cycles of the various fractals, whether it's day and night of one cycle of day, or new moon and full moon for the moon, or winter and summer solstice, or the various ages of the zodiac, which technically speaking, you could say Age of Aquarius, which we're moving into, is like the dawn point, or the eastern, the galactic east,
Hmm.
in a sense of the precessional cycle, basically. All a big fractal, basically. At least that's how I see it. That's how I relate to it. As a hologram, each of the cycles is a reflection of the other, just on different scales, basically.
Right.
Which is then perfect timing for basically what we're experiencing, like all these different myths you're talking about with the cultures, and this being the end time,
Yeah.
is basically the end of the galactic night and the beginning of the galactic day, so to speak.
Correct. The rebirth in the east. That
Yep.
Star of the East thingy.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
Out of the night. Yeah, that's beautiful. Let's wake up.
And then that's the whole thing of, well, it's like, what's that saying? It's always darkest before dawn,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm.
Yeah. It's always silence before the storm as well.
Yeah.
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 The last time of destruction. The dark night is coming.
Well, surely it has to, I mean, so many things, so many creative things going around the place, It just seems to be like this kind of slow motion effect of the scaffolding of the historical cycle is still slowly being taken down,
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yep.
we're gonna attempt to go a little bit deeper into this
Mm-hmm.
time-wise and look at the different calendars we have and maybe put them somehow in order, if that makes sense or not. So let's start with, what calendar are we in now?
For sure, yeah. Gregorian calendar was instituted in around 1582. Pope Gregory the 13th, which is a funny one, Gregory the 13th, as a number, is like
He has laid
Catholic
the
Church
foundation.
went out of went to quite a degree to try and wipe out the number 13 from the Central Americas for several hundred years. But that's who the calendar is named after, so to speak.
Yeah, and also 1 + 4 is 5. The body, pentagon, so the whole system.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, this is it. You know, they demonize these numbers while at the same time secretly worshiping them behind closed doors, kind of stuff. You know, if you look at any ancient site or any modern church or building, sacred temple, any of these kind of things, they've all got geometry involved in them. They all have these various cycles embedded into their architecture. And a lot of the time it goes unnoticed, you know. Or it's just generally, you know, associated with the 12 around 1, and then generally it's just everybody's happy to relate to those with the Gregorian months, basically, because that's what we used to. But the actual Gregorian evolved from like the Julian calendar, which then goes back to like foundation of Rome. Before that was like Romulus's calendar, which had like 10 months and was originally dedicated to the ward god. Which is really, I see, the root of this whole thing, because before you had the Roman people, you had the Etruscan people, and they had a Mars-like deity, or god, or being, or whatever you want to call it. And his name was Maris, with an I.
Right.
But he was like a gardener. He was like a spring gardener deity, you know, like a green man, rather than a warrior. And
like the Mars men that are
essentially-
green.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think maybe this is even, you know, reason why we want to go to Mars and turn it into a green planet, you know? We want to re-greenify Mars. But yeah, I've often contemplated what would actually have happened in history, you know, if we'd all sat down and had a peace pipe. Talked about sharing wisdom and sharing the land from the first place. Then it becoming this, like, you know, basically continuous battle for like thousands of years, you know?
Yeah.
Basically, after the motto, who controls the time, controls the end time, controls what's being built, how, everywhere.
Exactly,
Complete
the
control.
calends. Yeah, the calends, the day that the taxes were due to Caesar was the calends, which is essentially the calendar purpose was to basically collect taxes.
Becomes the calling.
And, yeah, and organize the community so they know these certain days, that's when you need to pay your rent, so to speak, to the higher-ups.
Right.
And then the taxation system and all this kind of stuff. Talking about going really deep, but, you know, as soon as it's then related to the Pope and the canon law and all this stuff to do with the reclaiming of the sovereignty and all this birth certificate stuff, all this stuff. I mean, you've already interviewed like Santos Bonacci and the guy lifting the veil, all these people doing tremendous work, you know. But my question is, at the same time as signing a document, there's always this thing of actually dating it as well. So it's a two-part signature. All these things always have the signature and the date. I think they both play an important role in like maintaining the status quo, basically.
Right.
Yeah. But the date is something that isn't usually mentioned. You know, it's usually just focusing on the name. I think it's both. You know, and that's the thing. Like, you know, the time frequency shift is already in a globalized event. It goes on in different countries, aligning to natural time. I've been part of that in different periods of time in the last 10 years or so. And essentially that's what people are trying to do. They're trying to align themselves outside and beyond the current bubble. So it's kind of like, you know, either we could wait for the bubble to actually wake up, or we just become a greater bubble and just get on with actually doing it with whoever we can co-create stuff with outside a bubble. And before we know it, everybody's going to be jumping at chance, because essentially it's the complete inverse of the modern capitalistic kind of regime,
Right.
the whole free market economics, blah de blah, basically.
Wow.
Which is what's happening. It is already happening. I just, more and more it seems like all these different networks are connecting off. What I'd really like to see is like,
Right.
a
The bubble has
completely,
burst, and
yeah,
we find ourselves in this gigantic bubble now, and
yeah,
reconnect, which is great, and that's what the show is for, and then we all come together again. But let's talk about the names of the months. I mean,
okay,
of this calendar, which has 12 months.
sure,
Obviously, there's 13-month calendars, there's 10-month calendars, all kinds of stuff.
yeah,
But this one, where do we start?
yeah. Well, traditionally now we start with January, which is then Janus, the two-faced god looking to the past and the future. Excuse me. And so, I mean, to me, that's quite a linear face, because you're always looking to the future. What about the present?
Huh.
So, I find it quite a dualized kind of deity. I like the trinitized deities personally, because you have both the extremes plus the balance point. But obviously that's my opinion, really, rather than, people can interpret things in different ways, After that, you got February, which is named after a ritual sacrifice. So they do like blood lettings of various goats and stuff, and then look at their entrails to decide what to do next.
Yeah, we get worse.
Is this
It's when it heats up, when the sun starts getting a little warmer. It's like coming back slowly. So that we get words like fever from it.
Oh yeah.
Février is it in French? Yeah,
Right.
it's getting hotter.
Wow. Definitely burnt at the stake, man.
Yeah.
uh,
February. Okay, then we got the third one, March.
Yeah. So maybe the actual sacrifice was determine who to go to war with, basically. It's usually what they were doing. These big empires, who will we conquer next? So they do the sacrifice, the whatever goat or whatever, and then decides whoever to attack. And then March would be like the month to actually go and do that. And this is even continued in the present day. If you look at the different campaigns in the Middle East, there were a lot of them that started in March.
Right.
Essentially, because it's spring. It's basically
Yep.
best chance to,
Yeah, they even call it the Egypt Spring and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. But then the calendar starts getting a bit nice after that. It's like April, May, and June are all named after goddesses, which makes a lot of sense because we're moving into summer and the return of light and the abundance of nature and the growth of nature and everything. So you got April after Aphrodite and May after Maya, goddesses of love and fertility and growth, and Juno, goddess of marriage, which is like the summer solstice, so like the marriaging of the.
All right. So hold on.
Yeah.
Let's go back and make that a sentence, because now you can say the two faces heat up and go to war.
Yeah.
And after that storm, there is, new spring and fertility and growth.
Indeed. It's very polarized. Maybe this is the thing of the warrior, he's like meant to be defending his family, That's a lot of the time what's generally the sort of marketing of getting soldiers to go and defend their lands and their cultures, which makes obviously a lot of sense. Everybody should have the right to defend themselves, And then, defending the land, you could also see as defending the goddess of the land, basically. It's definitely the nicest part of the calendar in terms of the energy dynamics of where the names come from. Definitely.
Number 7, July.
Yeah, right on. Okay, so now we've got 2 months named after Julius Caesar and Augustus Caesar. Before that, they were Quintilis and Sextilis, so the 5th and 6th month, because originally it started in March. But they all wanted months named after them. I think one of them named it after it himself. The other one, somebody else decided to name it after him. I'm not sure if they both actually changed the name themselves. But essentially, it's the summer, the peak of summer.
Yeah.
Naming after like the emperors, the rulers, the whole like emperors sitting on the throne and all the
And
power.
also in Zodiac we have July is also in phonetic sounds like you and lie, because you lie in that one point of Cancer, which is lying on that highest point of the astrological wheel. So
Indeed. Yeah, absolutely.
You know and you lie.
you lie. And from here you start decaying, to August and to other months.
Thanks. Okay, August,
Yeah, and they kind of got bored of naming. They seem to have got bored at some point and stopped actually giving them interesting names, because after that it was like September, October, November, December is essentially the numbers 7, 8, 9, and 10. So, it's like, yeah. I mean, the thing about the Gregorian calendar is essentially the only real place it comes from is Rome. Although, obviously, because of the spread of it, Roman Empire, it's like all the different cultures sort of associated their meanings to it.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a choice between allowing your culture to be entirely wiped out or surrendering to a superior force and then weaving your myths into their myths, so that you don't, like, all of your cultural knowledge is destroyed. Generally speaking, cultures have decided to just, like, be like, well, we can't win, let's at least survive, So it's been woven together. So that's how, these different resonances of these names can have multiple interpretations. Definitely.
So what would
But it's
be the
certainly
reason?
quite a wonky one,
Yeah, what would be the reason that you put 2 extra months in there?
Because they didn't have enough to begin with. The year only had 304 days to begin with. And there was like a 60-so day period before the spring equinox where it was like there wasn't any time. Apparently, according to, historical records and stuff.
So you just take off some time from counting.
Yeah, exactly. Like
And then
time
start
off
again.
from counting
Time
food
off.
again. Yeah. And maybe a time for total debauchery and
Time
like,
out.
just complete and utter. Yeah, exactly. So it has some pretty bizarre origins to it and stuff like this. Was even the myth of Romulus or something? It's like Romulus was nurtured by 2 wolves or something, because he was disowned or something by his parents, and he ended up being brought up by wolves in the forest. There's some sort of mythical stuff to do with Romulus and stuff. But yeah, essentially, that's what we've got. That's what we work with. There is a curious correlation between the months and the traditional ruling planets of astrology. So Mars is then, Mars is therefore associated with Mars. April with Venus, May with Mercury, June with the Moon, and then the Sun and July, and basically they superimpose over each other. So if you take away the actual month names and sort of replace them with the archetypal planetary sort of archetypes, you get a more universally applicable sort of system, really. But my main thing about it is just the fact it's irregular. And, you know, why is it we've got 12 months and the name month comes from moon? But when you start a month, it's not always new moon.
Mm-hmm.
You know? That to me is just, you know, it's kind of like psychotic. It's like having having a natural system and then a pretend system, you know? I don't really consider myself a Roman. I don't really consider myself Catholic or Christian, although, you know, I appreciate wisdom from all cultures, essentially. Generally speaking, when I meet Christian people, maybe walking down a path and stuff, they generally call me a pagan.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really consider myself a pagan either. I just consider myself like a human being from planet Earth, essentially.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Maybe just let's talk about the 33 number, you know, because you use that number a lot in your writings and what that number signifies for you, you know, in mythology as well.
Excellent. Yes, please. Well, I mean, basically what we're talking about here is like the difference between sort of traditional knowledge that's more dogmatic and then traditional knowledge which is more universal. You talk about it in your shows, syncretism. Because basically all these other cultures are just essentially existing in a different time frequency. While I was investigating particularly the leap day cycle, what I stumbled upon was the 33-year cycle, which has been written a lot about in various books about time and calendars and improving the accuracy. Because this is the other thing about a Gregorian, as well as having these irregular months over the leap day cycle of the Gregorian, which lasts about 400 years. The days fluctuate so that essentially each day isn't, you can't really guarantee it's that day. It could be like yesterday or tomorrow because of this leap day cycle. And you know, this is when it all gets like crazy amounts of numbers and formulas and ratios and all this kind of stuff. But what I found peculiar about the 33-year cycle was it has 8 leap days, and if you do the equation 8 over 33, you get a number 0.24242424 repeating, basically. And as a geometry, using the tetrahedral geometry of the 3 regular years plus a leap year in a 4-year cycle, you can create things like the diamond matrix, which is essentially equivalent to flower of life for the 19-year cycle, but is instead covering the 33. Now, my mind immediately wanders to things like Persian carpets, magic carpets, because a lot of the time you see these with the diamond shape on them.
Mm-hmm.
And that is essentially where this 33-year cycle comes from. It comes back to ancient Persia, ancient Arab traditions. And also the 33rd degree, in the sense of latitude north, runs pretty much down the Mediterranean Sea till you reach the Middle East, and is basically then the border between Lebanon and Palestine and Israel, and then runs on into Syria, and then on into like essentially where Baghdad and Babylon used to exist.
Yeah.
And you know, etc., etc. Basically, you have all this stuff to do with the Masons, the Master Masons, and they're essentially the ones that are building all these sacred geometral cities, which is essentially just the same as what our ancestors did with pyramids and stone circles and all this kind of stuff. Which is right there, you know, it's right beneath our noses. And generally, unless you go looking for it, it's not really something that's spoken about.
Yeah.
But for me, the 33-year cycle was like, wow, what's this? Investigated it more, and then all these other connections come along. And one of the programs that I've like used since I've started doing these investigations is called StarCalc, which is a pretty rudimentary looking program, but it's you can do a lot with it that a lot of these other more fancier programs don't do as well, basically.
What is it called?
It's called StarCalc. It's actually a Russian program designed by a Russian bloke. It's downloadable free. It takes up barely any space. But I decided I'd just investigate the entire amount of time that StarCalc allows me, which is basically 20,000 years. So going back to 10,000 BC and forward to 10,000 AD, I basically plotted the entire 20,000 years in 19-year cycles. And I just started finding all these different codes, geometries, and then overall afterwards I was like, oh, I wonder what the average amount of time a year is over the full 20,000 years. And lo and behold, it ended up being exactly the diamond matrix. So 365.2424 days was the geometrical average over the 20,000 years. And I wasn't expecting that, you know, I was just curious. And so that was another thing just to kind of like back it up, so to speak. But it does fluctuate. That's the average. So at the beginning, 10,000 BC, the year was essentially longer, and in 10,000 AD it will be essentially shorter. But it's like over 20,000 years, it's essentially about a second per century, I think it is. Something like this. So, I mean, very unnoticeable over short periods of time. It's only over long periods of time that it's noticeable. And this is the thing that boggles my mind, you know. It's like, how can our ancestors have had such a complete understanding of time when essentially the only way I came to the conclusion myself is by having 20,000 years worth of data to work with. How did they come to the similar conclusions? Same numbers crop up.
They must have been in a bigger bubble already and better connected. Ready to burst that bubble and then do the same thing over.
33-year cycle. When combined with the 19, you get the 52. 52-year cycle is the Mayan cycle of the new fire ceremonies. So again, you get this stepping stone sort of development. The 19 is like the basic cycle, plus the 33 is the average leap day cycle. You then get 19 plus 33 is 52. The 52 is then the cycles of the Zolkin with the Earth year 365. And each one kind of builds upon the next one. But it does boggle the mind, you know, because it's like all these different mathematical cycles, you know, for me, it's like I don't have a problem with them because I just have this affinity with maths. And that's why I started to try and create art out of it, so that I could try and like get it away from the maths a bit more. Because not everybody is so mathematically inclined.
Well, you do make beautiful presentations. They look very
Thank you.
accurate and very nice
Um,
and
Thank
spacey,
you.
and I love them.
Great. Excellent. I have some new things in the cauldron at the moment as well.
Nice. Yeah, and pretty much, that's what people have been doing to tell us it over time, put it in some sort of art, in some sort of visual creative process. And we have, for example, last Renaissance with Da Vinci and so on. He did the Last Supper, which we know shows all the months. The 12 apostles are the 12 signs of the zodiac that's been done. And
Yep.
there's a German guy as well, Albrecht Dürer, who was somewhat the German Da Vinci, if you will. Did a whole bunch of woodcuts and paintings. Was also into all the occult stuff, yeah. And some of his woodcuts are very interesting. I actually stumbled upon a book the other day and found these two pictures, which both seem to be the Last Supper. One, but what's the difference is the number of apostles there. They do have similarities, but the number of apostles is different. One is arguable 10 or 11. I say 10 because on the left there's this guy he's very close to the other guy. It almost looks like, that's a twins. That could be counted as one almost. Because you don't see the body of the other guy, so I want to say that's depicting 10-month calendar. And if you look at the windows, or actually in front of the table there's a plate which, shows it's quartered. There's a cross in there. One quarter is dark. Wonder what that is, if that's the Kali Yuga or something. I mean, there's been different interpretations of this, obviously. But we're just trying to,
Yeah, no, do you know
look
when
from
it's
it
dated to? It's a bit
oh boy.
dated. I've contemplated the missing out of months could also sort of represent like death, like the passing away.
Yeah. I mean, one interpretation is that Judas has already left the evening meal, the Last Supper.
Okay.
So, that's why they're kind of lamenting and stuff, and got one guy's crying.
Well, it certainly ties in with all this end time stuff, the Last Supper, like there's never going to be another one.
Right.
All this kind of stuff.
Yeah, next thing's gonna be breakfast.
Yeah,
yeah, sure.
Go for it.
No, and the architecture is also different. In one picture we see round shapes, the Gothic style of ceilings, which was before Renaissance, and on the other picture we have Renaissance architecture and the, those square shapes, like two male and female as well, and also the colors. Moon black, female is white. So how can that be interconnected as well here?
Yeah, weird. Wow.
Well, with the 13, that symbolism with the crossing over, the X and the O, that's the crossing over, basically through the black hole, if you want. So that is all end time stuff, definitely. Especially the one with the 13 there. On the one with the 10, you see, on the left there's a window that's bright, and on the right side it's night. But in the one with the 13, it just seems to be dark out.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
only one shining in the cross, again, there's the XO symbolism. His head, you know, that the halo is in form of a cross, and that direction is opposite in the picture with a 10. If you look, he
Yeah.
points the head in the other direction.
And also
So
the pie, you know, we see the taken part of the pie on the white window side. So just like use some kind of the energy of that white window instead of that dark one.
mm.
Hmm.
So XO crossing over symbolism everywhere,
Hmm.
which is, yeah, calendar, end time, Kali, Kali Yuga,
Hmm.
Kala.
Calendar. Yes.
The lender of Ka.
The lender of Ka.
Yeah.
Ka lend Ra, life.
Yeah.
Like as well the Merkaba, where the Ka is the body and the Ba is the soul.
Hmm.
So you imagine the Ka lender is like how you organize lending your body
Hmm.
or your Ka. So you lend your body for a certain period of time, and you know you get paid bits of promissory notes and everything. In the Ka lender.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So we're all renting ourselves out to each other for various like bits of work, basically, which is essentially just being part of a community, but it's kind of yeah,
Hmm.
history.
Right. And some people are actually using the 13-month calendar still. I hear like Peruvian farmers up in the
Yep,
mountains, they still use these rather natural cycles.
absolutely. The further you go into nature, is essentially what you always find. I mean, there's some plants that will only, you know, you can only harvest them at a new moon or a full moon. I think particularly bamboo is one of these plants.
Hmm.
And I'm pretty sure you'll find, you know, all these different natural flowering, harvesting, seeding, and all this kind of stuff tying in with that massively. Because that's essentially all nature knows, you know, like nature, animals, plant life, ocean life, relate to the actual reality of nature. The tides are naturally in time with the moon because it's part of the moon's energetic matrix. You know, it's not like the dolphins are like, oh, we're gonna like swim south for the winter. Okay, wait for the 1st of December. You know, they don't use the Gregorian basically.
Hmm. We can talk about maybe zodiac disc, you know, and signs, and Ophiuchus sign, you know, which is 13th sign, as people call it
Yeah,
that way. Serpent bearer, you know, the
definitely.
consciousness bearer. So, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. If you include a ficus, you have a very different looking zodiac because the signs are based off of how long the sun is in each of the signs. And that varies. Like Scorpio only lasts for 7 days, and Virgo is like 45 because of the size of the sky in terms of the constellation signs that the sun takes to go through. You know? But being the 13th sign, to me, it's kind of like, you know, it can be related to this whole like serpent wisdom, which is so many different mythologies you can connect with this, whether it's the Kundalini serpent or the rising of the energy through the chakras, or the
Yeah,
serpents in various myths, like the serpent that's tempting Adam and Eve and all this kind of stuff, which is usually made out to be an evil serpent. But essentially, it's like some of the biblical stuff talks about eating of the fruit and becoming one of us, knowing the difference between good and evil and becoming like gods, basically. The 13th sign, to me, is like completion. If in a octave of music, you have the 12 notes, not within the octave, if you include all the notes, not just the notes of the scale. But in order to actually complete the full octave, you need that 13th tone, so that the first tone and the 13th tone are actually the same note at a different octave. Otherwise, it's like it's not the full completion. So to me, 13 is completion.
Yeah.
Is knowing the difference between the 12 and the 13, and then the archetypal aspect of it of being like masculine and feminine. Masculine being very like straight edges and angles and sort of squares and sharp, and like the feminine being natural and like curvature and like ratios and organic, so I've like I try and do both. I try and like actually through doing both, it's helped me to see what I've seen, and that's why I particularly find that the 19-year cycle is kind of it may be a slightly more complex, but it's also more harmonious, because some years are 12 and some years are 13 lunations. So you get a nice alchemy. You get a kind of blending of masculine and feminine, archetypal. It doesn't get stuck in one or the other. It kind of flows backwards and forwards to kind of like, basically stop the obsessive sort of dogmatism,
Yeah. And also 14 is 1 plus 3 equals 4, Just serpent bearer of those 4 elements, fire, water, earth, and air, so.
Yep. Indeed, the 4 directions, the news, the NEWS, the news of the 4 directions, the 4 winds, 4 directional deities. Basically universally honored throughout the entire planet. Again, another thing like the flower of life. Where do you not find the 4 directions? And yet the cross has become universally sort of associated with Christianity. Which is, again, another one of these co-opting symbols, just like the swastika was co-opted. And all different other stuff's been co-opted throughout time, like the all-seeing eye by the Masons, all this kind of stuff. Same with the cross. It became like the kind of property of Christianity. In fact, it's universal. It's based off of the solstices and equinoxes.
And that's kind of what we're finding. We're trying to shed that really not accurate measuring of time and recording of time, and go to the more natural cycle. And let's talk a little bit about how we can actually do that, because time is such a weird thing. Everywhere you are on the planet, it's different, because constellations are different, and also through the cycles, it's different. We see that in night and day, days are shorter, days are longer. To get a really clear understanding from the inside to the outside, so that we can actually portray it correctly. What have they done in the past, and what can we do to achieve that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to begin with, I just would say notice the new moon, the full moon, the half moons is a best place to start, really, in terms of I feel that the feminine emotional level that the moon embodies is before we get to the mental level from the physical body, the first place to me is like the emotional body.
Right. And
Tuning in, before
right.
you get like mental and stuff, it's good to have a nice balanced emotional body, basically.
Yeah.
Which is the moon. To me, it's like it's the moon.
The closest one that we can measure. But then there's the sun and there's sun calendar, so we need to do that too. So we need to combine the
Sure.
two, right? And
Yeah.
that has been done. Was the Mayan
Yeah.
calendar is still I believe, the most accurate that we
Well,
had.
yeah, the Mayan calendar
Say?
though is actually based off of human genetics, really. Although essentially in the actual Maya history, it's also associated with particular zenith days. But the ratios in which it exists reflect the time period it takes for a child to grow in the womb. Plus, we also have our 20 fingers and toes, and our 13 articulations, our major joints in our bodies, which equate to 20 times 13, which is 260. So it's more of a genetic human cycle, the 260 days. Whereas, the solar year is the 365 plus leap days. The lunar level is the phases of the moon. And Earth, Earth changes every day. Every day it changes its face towards the sun. So to me, like, the day cycle is basically the Earth cycle. But all these different things, they have different cycles at different fractal levels. But that's essentially the basics, is knowing the different fractal levels. The Mayans were definitely very accurate with their calendars, for sure. But so were the Egyptians. So were the Druids. So were pretty much every single ancient culture. And a lot of that information has been lost anyway. It's either been burnt or destroyed, or even maybe pretended to be destroyed so they could go keep it in their vaults under the Vatican City and everything. Keep it to themselves.
Right, and the normal people didn't have access to that. Their time measure was really just what they saw, and what they were told to do, pretty much as slaves of the keepers. And I just wonder how that would look if we had, just imagine, an arm watch today that would actually show you the real time cycles, with somehow digitally, that it's tough to comprehend, because
for
all
sure,
of a
man,
sudden, in an hour you have different amounts of minutes, because they get longer and shorter. So it's your understanding of time is not that linear anymore, and it must look so funny. Oh, that went by quick, because it really did. And now you know why, because it just was that short period. You can't stretch it out any longer. So that would be really funny.
Yeah, no, the way in which every single program, computer, if you want to run a business on planet Earth, you have to run it in the Gregorian calendar, because that's the calendar of the stock exchanges. It's the calendar of all the taxation systems, all the governments. They all use the Gregorian. It's the standard throughout the world, basically. And it's certainly, to me, is a stumbling block. Why only have one? We're in the age of computer technology. Not that we need the technology. Our ancestors managed perfectly fine without the technology. But it's certainly, a fun idea to
take the
actually,
constants away, you know,
yeah.
those uh,
No, the organic is definitely the way to go. Basically, we're so used to geometrically, each hour is the same. The months are, whatever they are.
right.
But that's what we're stuck. That's what we're stuck with. That's what it is. It doesn't change. It's
Mm.
basically
Yeah,
the same record of history going round and round.
if you keep those constants, then you're constantly correcting what you have broken away from the time that really went by. So constantly correcting these constants, and that obviously comes from Constantine, that dude. And uh, yeah, let's break them away. Those constants, it needs to flow.
Yeah, it needs to flow, man. It needs to fluctuate. Definitely. Being okay with the ebb and flow of the emotions, that we're constantly changing. In fact, change pretty much is the constant of reality, Our consciousness changes, our
The only
thoughts.
constant is change, yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it'd be a really good thing to have like a organic timing device. Definitely.
Mm.
Even if it was still a machine, really, it would be a digital machine, but it would output the organic cycles.
And the good news is, that's actually, you said it, like the infinity, I mean, finite things end at some point. You told me yesterday.
Yeah,
That's the
right
good
on.
news.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Systems that are based off of finite functioning, as in systems that believe there isn't enough to share to go around, essentially are self-fulfilling prophecies. They're prophesizing their own demise because they cannot think outside the box in ways that would adequately sustain all of this in a perfectly reasonable level. And they can't, they can't contemplate the idea that we could actually be an abundant planet, and therefore we'd have so much, we'd be happy to share all of it, basically. From a local level, we all do a bit together. It becomes like greater than the sum of our parts. It's always been like that. Whether it's vertical farming or like, permacultural principles, or just generally producing less waste. Is another biggie. I mean, there's like food mountains.
Or just generally being able to communicate like we are, like the internet right now. I mean, we're making leaps. There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
You put it beautifully the other day when you said we're already time traveling. I mean, I'm in one time zone. You're like 7 hours from me, and then Christina is another couple or 3 hours or whatever. Different time zones. We're all here right now.
Yeah.
That is time traveling in its kinder shoes.
Yeah.
Remembering through this technology, how we can be one at one time in the now in this bubble. Internet, the net in terra, in Earth, and what ripple effect that causes, this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the rippling
this little
effects.
bit of time traveling that we're doing right now, what ripple effect it is letting loose.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe we're even helping to fix the timelines. Just sitting in an open communicative space.
It must be
The
mirroring of it, that how we're doing it. What's your view on that? What's my view on that? And combining this all brings the ripple.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I kept on going through my mind today the alignments for today. I was really mind-boggled by the trinitization. This is exact point in time. It's just like,
yeah.
Well, what you're saying at the beginning, how that even happens, is really is like how. I mean, I can't calculate that. That's like ridiculous probability calculation. But this kind of stuff happens, you know, and essentially it's like, you know, synchronicity
Hmm.
is like,
Little knot points.
yeah, naturally, yeah, and the knot points all connect together, network together, like we're doing now. It's great.
You know, braiding,
Yeah,
crossing over, crossing the streams. Don't cross the streams, right? You don't know what's gonna happen. We're gonna mess up time continuum.
yeah. Well, we don't need to worry about that, man, because you know, if anybody's going to be doing that, it's probably going to be the people at CERN, you know.
Yeah. Guess that's what you're trying. That's what they're trying to tell you. Hinted that a little bit in the Ghostbusters movie there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about obviously depicting it in this round fashion uh, in a calendar or so limits out from really seeing what it is. It's more like a spiral, right? Not just a one cycle. This cycle grows bigger and comes from smaller spheres. And it's funny when you look at, for example, how fairy tales start. It always says once upon a time. You know, up on a time, like up there. Once up on a time, like we're down there in this funnel, like, you know, strudel down the drain, you know, maybe the wrong direction. So we're just remembering that from these higher spheres. So
Yeah.
so we gotta kind of see these cycles as a whole more, and then we know when to take our time. You know, if you don't take your time, then time takes you, and then you are, you know, it's like, do you run your business or does your business run you? So you get lost in time space continuum cycles that you see, instead of really adjusting to the ones that can be felt. You know, if you do it right and slow down sometimes and take your time and meditate
Mm.
and stuff. You know, everybody's saying I don't have time, like I'm in a hurry, I'm on a deadline, you know. I don't have time. I can't talk right now. I don't have time. We all have the same time. That it's not like you can, you know, you have less time than I do.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. You know, I see you next time. What is that next time? That will then be the now as well. I mean,
Yeah, we're learning again that time is part of us. Like what you were saying earlier, Christina, about us being, we are time. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not something external that's like a hierarchical system that's dictating to us what actions we have to follow. It's then we're internalizing it, and then we're becoming our own sovereign beings in charge of our time-space continuum and how it relates to other time-space continuums that we come into contact with.
right, like Santos said, we are Timmy, Atom, Tommy, Timmy and Tommy.
Yeah.
Time emits.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, you guys are like, yeah, advanced word investigators. It's,
It's so much fun.
it is fun. It definitely is.
Start looking. So you don't look at it really anymore. Just come. It's the vibrations. You've learned to see or to feel those vibrations of those, just the single letters, the numbers, where the letters are in the word. Then obviously also the etymology. You know, and then it's funny. Sometimes we go in these etymology groups and post something, and it's like, and get in a discussion, and they say, no, this actually comes from this, and PIE, the proto Indo-European and stuff, and that's all well and good. Yeah, that has been our recording through this scientific way to try to explain it that way. This is completely correct. Can't argue
Yeah.
with it. But there may be more to it. There may be different angles of looking at it, different time feelings of looking at it.
Yeah.
You know, not just. I mean, especially the PIE that was never written, was never really spoken anymore when we started really investigating it that way in a scientific way. I mean, remember this the whole language science is not too old, just like what 200 years or so,
Yeah.
and trying to put it together that way is completely right. But you know, if you really zoom out from that scientific context, because that gives you just a way of looking at, and you cut out, you know, elimination process, so to speak. You know, you cut out all these parts of it. That's like saying, you know, 90% of our DNA or whatever they say is just junk. You know, it's not. It's fractal part of the whole thing. So let's just ride over that, over a word really like a child would, you know, and just hear the sounds phonetically instead of looking just at the letters, grammar, you know, these groups, Grammarly, and people make fun of people that are actually saying something completely different by misspelling something. Funnily, that
Yeah.
actually supports their cause, but these people don't see it because they just see the correct way, right? Which is not always the way it's meant, because depending who, where says it, there's a certain vibration to that. Um,
Totally.
so if you take a word and you try to understand it from every person speaking it in this world, which is a whole bunch, wow, and you come up with a whole bunch of information about this word and the parts of it. It blows up. Then you just put the puzzle back together however you want, and it's always going to be part of reality. And if that's not some sort of scientific process that's rather enriching than eliminating, then I don't know. I mean, all the parts are there. It doesn't matter how you take them apart and put them together, because that's our imaginative, creative
Yeah.
process of creating our future time thingy.
Yeah, yeah, they're not flat. Words have many facets, just like the geometries. Like you're saying, man, like each language kind of gives you another facet to the meanings of the word from different perspectives. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like Seven Bomar said, many vehicles to get to one place. We can write on, phonetics, on grammar. We can do that in numbers and etymology and all the rest of the things. So
Indeed. It's all one.
anyway,
Yeah. Yeah, when you were talking about DNA as well, man, I was thinking sequences. They're always talking about DNA sequences. And I was thinking of the word sequences and like basically seeing quinces.
Yeah.
So basically, it's seeing pentacles or seeing phi ratios or quints.
Section of quints.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
insects, these things are in sections. That's why I call them that. So sequence, there's sections of quintessence.
Yeah. And then quintessence as well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What is our essence of the essence of our true essence, It's like
The smaller and
maths,
the bigger cycles.
vibration. Yep.
Definitely feels good to be in the now.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
There's a hum now in the background. And the funny thing is, if you're quiet, you hear Christina has a clock in the background.
Oh yeah.
Tick tock, tick.
Well, that's it. You know, it's the end times. When time's running out. There's the tick.
Yeah. I just bought a new headset today, which is great because now we can hear you even better. And
Yeah.
that's the first time that I heard this clock in the background. And that's our show about time.
Kronos, yeah.
Oh
Kronos.
dear.
And there were so many syncs and coincidence, not coinkydinks. They were just sequence thingies. But what else is today?
What else? Yeah, what else is today? It's the actual 0 degrees Aries if you measure it with stars.
Yeah.
Which is exactly a third of the way around
Yeah,
from
that's
the
just
center
funny.
of the galaxy. Yeah.
That just blows my mind. Okay.
Yeah,
And
no.
then it was the 72nd birthday of something?
Oh yeah, and then today, 72 years ago, Albert Hoffman did his wee cycly home and discovered LSD. Yeah, totally. And 72, that's exactly a cosmic day in precession. So
Right. As up tonight as well.
that's basically been a cosmic day. So we've had a cosmic day of LSD on Earth.
In 0 degree Aries.
Yeah.
And we have a
Wow.
lot of first timers.
Yeah.
You were the first time on a radio show. You were the first
Yeah.
time on our radio show. It's
Yeah.
the first time that we talked to you. All right, let's talk a little bit more about your book.
Sure.
19,000
to.
Years of Peace.
Right on.
Tell us a little bit what's in there. What can we expect from it? And a little bit about the process, like the creative process.
Okay. Right on, yeah, absolutely. Well, it was a bit of a surprise, really. I wasn't really expecting to be kind of finishing it off now. I'd kind of put it completely out of my mind, actually. Essentially, that's why I created my website, because I had done all this research and had all these different files in all different places, and it really become quite, chaotic and disorganized. And, I wanted to create something out of it. And so the website was a way of trying to organize it into, sections and sequences. And, but I'd put the whole idea of doing a book, like, completely out of my mind. And then a couple of months ago, I was doing various doodles and stuff, and came up with a title. And because of its originally, I was just going to be like 19 Years of Peace, because of how I feel about the flower of life and time being this. Well, it's like another step in the evolution of the 19-year cycle. So yeah, basically, what came to me was that by extrapolating it to the 19,000 years, I could then encapsulate all the different research that I had been engaged in. Because basically with the program StarCalc, its maximum amount of time that you can investigate is 20,000 years. And just going by the kind of the law of fractals, and the way that you add zeros to things in our world, they become more potent. Like, have you watched any of Nassim Harameyn's stuff? Have you ever seen this stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he talks about like how it's fun, how like the bank account with more zeros and everything. So by making it 19,000 years apiece, I was basically able to include all these different investigations into the single book. And then before I knew it, I was like, oh, that's what I should call the chapters. And then copy, paste from different parts of the website. Copy, paste, different graphics. And then, there was a couple bits that I'd never written before. The bit about the whole Federal Reserve Act and this whole trying to control infinity with the financial system stuff. That entire chapter was me just recently trying to include this in there as well because, well, basically just because I think it's important to emphasize that what I feel I'm talking about in the book is known about behind closed doors.
Very applicable to our
and
investigations.
But like anything, like any tool, it can be used for good. It can be used to help people, or it can be used to control people.
Yeah.
So it's like I've been wanting for years to try and get more information out there with this kind of stuff, and I grappled with the idea of book for years, and then I just like, it's impossible. It's like infinity. It will never fit in a book. And then things just happened, But it basically centralizes around the flower of life as a time matrix, but it's also space and time because you can't really separate the two. It's kind of like a marriage of the cosmos, time and space. The recent eclipse on the spring equinox was essentially one of the key points of anchoring flower of life again on the Earth. There will be another total solar eclipse on equinox over Egypt kind of latitude in another 19 years' time. And I hope this 19 years is going to be like basically one of the most powerfully potent periods of history, basically, is like how I see it. I'm hoping to basically try and take what I'm doing out into different festivals, different stuff, because I used to do this stuff before. But I was more talking about other people's research more than my own, whereas now I've kind of done more of my own and would like to be able to, take it around the place and spread the flower of life time sequences where I go and stuff. But yeah, creative process, quite an interesting experience. Quite challenging. There's definitely been challenging times, extremely challenging times, and extremely exuberant and cosmically amazing times too.
Yeah.
The ebb and flow, the sine wave of basically it's like catching yourself at different points of consciousness. And you're really you're getting to that, it's another trough, and you're going down, and it's but at some point it's going to pick up again, and catching yourself in these different stages of consciousness, and either we can obsess about it and become really subjective and Oh my God, no, another one of these dark points. Or we can kind of look at it like objectively and see that these cycles basically, that is essentially what the waves of the ocean are trying to teach us. That like things are constantly changing. It's
Yeah.
good to be able to ride the wave and have some fun with it.
Hmm.
Um,
These dark times are really just the time for us to relearn how to shine our own light, right?
right on, absolutely. Yeah.
So where are we exactly in this cycle? In the 19 cycle and in the 33 cycle? Do you happen to know?
Okay. 19-year cycle, going by basing it on the equinox. We've just started a new 19-year cycle. In terms of 33, I use the 33 for geometrical purposes over large periods of time, but there is another cycle which is even more accurate, which I use in like smaller cycles, like hundreds of years, which I basically term timelines or time spirals. Because essentially that's what it does, is it keeps track of the alignments of total solar eclipses at the spring equinox. So it uses a celestial event to keep track of time, so that actually nature is determining the calendar. So in that respect, it's also the 19-year cycle we're at the moment is kind of like the peak of the cycle, because there has actually been an eclipse on the equinox. So there'll be 3 of them. We've had the first one. There's another 2 19 years apart in the coming years. And that's kind of like the peak of the pyramid of time. So, everything's coming into alignment. It will do that for the next 2 19-year cycles, and then it will like phase out again. And it won't repeat that again for about 391 years. Is the next time spiral, essentially. So it's like it's the beginning of a 19-year cycle at the moment. So new cycle, at the same time as it also being like the peak of the timeline, which lasts about roughly 400 years, but a bit less. And it's very much like a birthing point. I sometimes refer to it as like the birthing of the planetary butterfly. The historical cycle is kind of like the chrysalis. We basically, everybody's been trying to protect themselves, from each other, protect themselves from all different like challenges that we've kind of brought on ourselves by the constant historical games of this person beat the other person and then the other person have to beat them back and all that kind of stuff. So it's like the end of all that is like the planet is as a whole has like birthed the planetary butterfly, and so it's basically time to spread our wings and like really actually enjoy being human light beings on the earth, and like living by these like natural principles, because it's not like even though obviously like in regards to my book it can be seen quite like technical and maths and blah, but essentially it isn't rocket science. It's all based off of nature. I would challenge anybody to like try and do it differently. You know, I mean, essentially, it's like, you know, even though it's like my book, so to speak, you know, ultimately I see the original copyright goes to our ancestors and like nature.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm,
I'm just a messenger who's not really even a messenger. I'm just like just a dude that's like interested in maths and like has a very kind of like holistically, you know, ever expanding kind of connections of things together perspective.
Yeah.
mm,
And time is my sort of way of trying to alchemize all that together. Like one of the visions I've had of how to actually manifest it in reality is to actually have a community where you design the community so it has like a central hub area and then like 13 gardens around it. And then each garden would be like planted according to its cycle, and would, you know, you try and plant stuff so that it would like flower at certain times of the year, but it wouldn't have to be like, you know, dogmatic and fixed. But it would be like a natural time mandala sort of community is one idea.
Yeah.
I kind of see all this kind of stuff happening. I think essentially it's why we're all here and manifest alternative natural realities that, you know, show that you can live off the grid and you can be self-sustaining and all these things, which is probably the most secure you could make any country. You know, if a country is entirely self-sustaining, you know, it doesn't need any resources from anybody else to actually exist. Well, that's the most secure you could be. You know, you're not depending on foreign interests and foreign this and foreign that. So, you know, if the national security agencies and all these intelligence agencies and stuff were actually doing their job, well, you know, they'd be supporting, you know, community setups and local job incentives to get people creating their own resources locally, because it's the most secure thing to do. So, I mean, like, you know, either they haven't really caught on to that yet, or maybe they slowly are, because
or they don't
unfortunately,
want us to catch on to
yeah.
that.
Well, you know, like, yeah,
I mean, it's been working before that, you know. It's worked uh, before the industrialization. It works with most native peoples. They sustain themselves, live of the earth, of Mother Earth. It's
Hmm.
having a great comeback, and it's not been too long that we've been doing that, you know, industrialization stuff. So, but it is time. It certainly is time to stop harvesting from something that you know, we all feed off.
Yeah. And you also talked about the ancestors, you know, and how we borrow things from them, you know, the all the knowledge which was from them, and you know, which was laid for us. And we had amazing talk with Sevan Bomar, and he said that ancestors are asleep inside of you. So it's like, also you can check the word ancestors is like a cell, S, and Taurus, S like a serpent, and Taurus means also time, you know. So we have that exchange of time asleep inside of us, and it's up to us how we will, you know, to use that, and how we will spend that time in order to unravel some mysteries again and some knowledge again.
beautiful, absolutely. Yeah, we have the blood ancestry passed down to us through generations upon generations.
Mhm.
We are the the dream that our ancestors dreamt like thousands of years ago to be. We are their children.
Yeah.
It's essentially our duty even to like honor them and like give thanks for basically our roots of our cultures.
Yeah. To wake them again inside of us. So that's maybe the purpose.
Yeah. Absolutely.
What an honor.
Yes.
Indeed.
It is.
What a deed, what an honor. Right on. Well, Raah, I think we covered a whole bunch of stuff tonight. Gonna take my time to digest that for sure.
Yeah.
It will be a fun time cutting and hearing that all again.
Absolutely.
Now.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a heap of a bunch of more graphics we could include to try and bring more descriptions to what even we're talking about as well. Which is the great thing of the way you guys do your stuff. I really like your style, Thank you guys so much for this opportunity to like be on your show.
Thank you so much for coming.
It's been a great time. Many firsts, really great energy I feel, and thanks again.
Felt instantly at home. Yeah,
and we'll do this again. We'll be in touch, and we'll look forward to reading the completed version of your book.
Excellent.
Pretty soon.
Hey.
Let us know when it's there, and we'll blast it out. And
all right.
Hey, enjoy your evening. Thanks so much. Much love to you, and good luck with the rest of your work.
Thank you. You too. Have a lovely evening too.
Okay.
Many, many blessings.
Much love.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I know you know, I know you are the light that will shine, shine, shine on your mind, mind. Yeah, so bright, 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 that will shine, 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 bright, bright.